Let's talk about sex. Are you getting enough? Are you getting too little? Is there a too little or too much? And what do you do about it if you're in a relationship and your partner just wants something else? How do you determine what you need? Well, it is something like food, like shelter. We all have an innate sense of when we are satisfied. Some people need to eat a lot, some people eat very little. And each person has their own balance. But one thing is clear: we all have our fundamental needs, and sex is included. Did you know that it's hardly something you can negotiate? So if you have a partner who wants more or less than you're in for a ride. And you can decide whether you want to go for the long run and deal with the differences, or notice and acknowledge the differences and make fundamental choices to either address the inequilibrium or not. But one thing I can tell you from a lot of thousands of years of experience, as well, I'm exaggerating, last 40 years of helping couples, coaching people through these differences, sex is not something that you can tamper with. The people who have the lower libido set the tone. I hate to tell you that, but they simply cannot or will not usually make more happen. The person who has a higher drive is oftentimes asked to reduce their desire. And there are many pros and cons for it. But if you are getting together with a partner right now, I'd ask you to implore you, explore what your needs are, including closeness, amount of how much you like to communicate, speak, and talk, and have sex. Because our fundamental needs cannot be negotiated. You either have a higher level of testosterone drive, and that's including some women. See, some women have a greater sex drive than other women. Some men have a lower sex drive or higher sex drive than other men. It's not something you can divide between the sexes. It has to do with the individual amount of testosterone in most cases and childhood experiences. Barring traumatic experiences in the childhood, people who did not suffer in their childhood with negative sexual experiences have whatever level they have. That will change over time. It will change in old age. However, for most of the mature sexual ripe age, it will be a certain amount that will be required. Now, some people have started early on to hook themselves onto stimulants, usually if they've had a harder time to reach orgasm. People are drawn to pornography and stimulation, and harder stimulation, the harder it is for them to reach climax. Climax happens in the head. Did you know that? It is a trigger that many people revert to stimulating in their heads. Now, when we are in a relationship and we experience a different drive, I can almost pretty much guarantee you that that will not change. You can simply decide whether the person with a lower libido is going to live up a little bit to the needs of the higher one, and the higher one will reduce their needs if you are in really two different camps. But honor your own state, honor who you are and what it is you truly want, and explore what that is. Go into your ideal version and create a scenario in your mind as to what your ideal relationship would be like. See, in my TEDx talk, I say ask yourself when encountering two personal problems, ask yourself two questions. What do I really want? When I was in a pickle with my now ex husband 40 years ago, I complained to my meditation teacher that I was not getting enough sex. And I complained how he did not want to meditate as much, nor read as much, nor speak as much with me as I desired. So these inequalities usually happen to not only fall into the sexual compartment, but in many other areas. I had to counsel people who didn't hear enough the word I love you. We all have different needs, and that pertains to relationship between women and women, men and men, family members, or people in a relationship. Whatever our needs are, we need to be able to express them, and that For that, we need to know what it is you really want. So create a fantasy world for a couple of days in a row and just imagine what your life will be like. And don't censor it. For some people, it is indeed having multiple relationships. Whether it's doable in your emotional world or not is not the question right now. Just imagine what it is you ideally want. And I'm not talking about making yourself stimulated into some orgastic, ecstatic state. No, what you would really like in your daily life. Once you know that, and you're willing to say it to yourself and maybe some trusted friends, you already have made the biggest step, which is to realize what your current needs are and to stand up for it. See, when I then told my meditation teacher, well, I ideally would like da 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 da, he said, imagine that every day, but don't put a face on your request. Let the universe fill the shoes. So just become aware of what you want and sit in that fulfillment every single day. We, in the Living from Vision course, teach it in any other department of how to manifest your dreams. And you can apply that to finding the right sexual fulfillment, no matter what stage of relationship you're in right now. I, at that point, had to realize that I had judged myself when I was about 16, deciding to not be such a sexual person and to dampen it. And within a short time, I found the right man to match my image, which then turned out to be a man a few years later who still matched that image. But by then, I had outgrown my self judgment and decided I was okay being a sexual person. I was then 21. So you ask yourself, how did you determine what is right and what is wrong for yourself? Because likely you will attract that person into your life. That's the biggest secret I can share with you today. Whoever is in front of you is the perfect match to your unconscious programming. And if you want to make a change, first discover what it is you truly want and how that would feel if you already had that. From then on, energize that state. And if it requires of you to make a change in your life, then you can sit down together, maybe ideally make that journey together if you are in a relationship. And if you're on your own single, then you have the head start to give the universe the blueprint of what really is important to you. And I tell you, the relationships that have included and actually based their relationship on the highest values, which are spiritual, then down into the heart, their values of money, how they wish to have children, share generously with the community or not, down into the sexual arena and how they'd like to live. Like my ex husband wanted to live like a monk and still does. 40 years later, we're still great friends. However, as you can tell from my home here in Bali, last I talked to you was on the road. Other times I'm in my home in America. Other times I'm in my other home in Ubud. I share with you with a man from the perspective of having 40 years of a relationship with a man who shares the same dream and values as I do. So, to have a fulfilling relationship long term, you need to match. If you don't match, and I once listened and interviewed an old woman who had had a relationship with a man, she was now in her late 60s. I said, what is one secret for having a fulfilling relationship? And she said, keep your man satisfied. And she meant it. She said, I get myself into the mood, even if I don't feel like it anymore, being in her late 60s. Somehow she did what she needed to do to get there because he still had sex drive. And she knew if she didn't fulfill his needs, somebody else would, or he would make sure somebody else would. So it's your question. Do you want your relationship? Do you want to maintain it? Or do you want to do something to please your partner to fulfill their needs? And please remember, needs are partially fundamental and they are like rocks. Now, if your needs cannot be budged a little bit out of your comfort zone and your partner's adjusted, then face the truth and take actions based on that. But if you're willing to cooperate, you can then adjust and find out ways to augment the fulfillment of needs. They may be that there is a requirement for touch. that will fulfill one or the other or stimulate you to get into the mood in a certain way. One last tip I really want to urge you is before you get started, or if you're in a relationship, look up books on how your astrology affects your sexuality. I can tell you one thing. I am a Gemini, and what I read about myself is absolutely true. People don't get to me by rubbing my erogenous zones. They get to me. No, I'm not going to tell you what you have to do. No, truthfully, as a Gemini, you need, or people need to be penetrated through the subtle dimensions first. No secret, you can read this up on a book. A scorpion. Oh my God. They are a totally different kind of animal, I wanted to say, on this planet, but they are all very similar in their intensity. And it behooves you if you read up on it. So Google it. Amazon has plenty of books on telling you how astrology affects your erotic life. You can learn from it and you can help discover how to please your mate even more. Subscribe to my channel because I'm going to next talk to you about how to make love out of body. It is one of the most important techniques that can help you develop and discover intimacy that carries through the eons or decades that you will be together. I'm looking forward to talking with you again. Subscribe, like. If you want more information, click down below in any of my classes that are free. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Namaste.